Hi, this is Reno Lovison, and welcome to my photo gallery. The purpose of this photo gallery is twofold. One is to show off a few photographs that I've taken for what that's worth, and secondly, to create a demonstration of our virtual reality gallery tour, which is available to artists and photographers and anyone else who has visual artwork that they would like to share. Most of my photographs are composition related. I'm not necessarily an overly technical photographer. These fall more into the range maybe of snapshots, but I do, apply some technical knowledge to them and hope that there's some interesting composition. That first one is basically, as you can see, a duck in a pond near my house at the Nature Preserve or Nature Center. This next photograph is perhaps my favorite, and I love this picture because the composition I think is really quite good. I think her blue dress is really striking. The way the blue is reflected into in the bubbles is great. I love the little girl on the left who we caught mid-air. We can see a little bit of her shadow below, and the other kids all watching in anticipation. This is a photograph I call the Bubble Girl. This next photograph was taken on the same day and has much of the same sort of emotional exuberance in it, where we see the little girl just ecstatically interested in the bubbles as they're floating in the air above her, and we can just see how the joyfulness and happiness in this picture, as well as the interesting lighting effects that the bubbles create. If we move around to the other side of the gallery, we can see a few more photographs here. The one we're looking at right now is a photograph of a window segment in a place called House of Glenn's Wines on Wells Street in Chicago. I believe it is the oldest retail store still operating in the city of Chicago. Been around since just shortly after the Chicago fire. It's been around for a long, long time. And this is a very old, I don't know if you call it stained glass or painted glass window in the front of the building. I like the way the window panes sort of break up the image, but yet we see the overall image. And then, of course, I love the part where the window is broken and we can see through to the outside. Somehow I just think that adds some interest and dimension to this particular photograph. To the left here, you see a photograph of some chess pieces on the lakefront, and those of you familiar with the city will recognize this perhaps as the pavilion over by North Avenue Beach, where there's permanent chess boards actually painted into the concrete, although these guys have added their own chessboard. But just kind of a fun sort of afternoon feel to that, looking at the water and the chess pieces. This particular triptych, I'll call it, is three different photographs that I took on a visit to the Palette and Chisel, which is a artist gallery and art studio in the Gold Coast Old Town area, mostly Gold Coast because I think it's on either Dearborn or State Street. But they have a little garden in the back, and I just happened to see this door knocker and these old doorbells, and then this one interesting little pottery piece there and I just thought it was kind of interesting that these were not necessarily art objects, but they had a sort of artistic feel to them. This next piece is what I often call it Saturday in the Park, because I always think of the song by Chicago, but it really should be called Sunday in the Park because it is reminiscent of the George Seurat painting, which is so well known. There's one of which is at the Art Institute here in Chicago. Seurat painted it several times, trying to capture the light effect that he was experiencing. And here I think, I've sort of captured that with my camera. It looks a little bit fuzzy because I manipulated it to have a sort of a pointillism kind of look about it, so it would be more reminiscent of the Seurat painting. The next photograph is of some tables and chairs at the Ambassador East Hotel in Chicago, which is of an older vintage hotel, still in operation. There's a restaurant there that used to be known as the Pump Room. It's not called the Pump Room anymore, but it still has this sort of 1950s vibe, and I thought, this was really has that sort of cool 50s sort of feel about it, the monochrome aspect to it, also all of the tables and chairs lined up in a row so neatly, just kind of a cool sort of mid-century vibe. I took this next picture the same day. It's actually two pictures. I took one picture of the woman on the left and one picture of the woman on the right. They were standing on either side of a revolving door, and I omitted the revolving door and decided to just put them side by side, and so that we can sort of see it's just sort of interesting that they're sort of faced in the same direction, that there's a similarity to the clothes that they're wearing in terms of the drape of and so on, but yet a much different style to each of them, and just thought it was kind of an interesting composition between the two of them. Move to the other side of this particular wall. We'll see another two figures, and this is a photo I took when Julie and I were out walking in the park one Sunday afternoon, I believe it was. It was probably about 3 or 4 o'clock. Our shadows were very long, and I thought it just had a pretty cool look. I've done this photograph a couple of different ways, one with Julie in it and one where I sort of omit her, but in this particular version I decided to keep the one with both of us. But either way, it's just kind of cool showing the two figures in the long shadows. Shadows are always a lot of fun to investigate and see. Speaking of shadows, the next photograph is one that I was very lucky to get. It happened one afternoon while I was in my office. I have some pull-down shades on the window, and outside the window is a pine tree, and in that pine tree is often a squirrel or two scurrying around, but on this particular day the sun happened to project the image of the squirrel and the pine tree onto the pull down shade, and I had my camera handy enough to grab this picture, and I very much wanted to get a profile of the squirrel so that we could see that it is a squirrel. We see his bushy tail, we can see a little bit of his ear and so on, so I was very lucky to be able to get that shot. But again, fun with shadows. And finally, this last piece is a kind of a still life, but I grabbed it, I don't know, one day sitting there, again, I think it was a Sunday, I happened to look over and I just happened to notice the shadow on the wall, and I just thought it was kind of interesting. I just think shadows are kind of interesting, and something just sort of grabbed me about this, and so I took it. Of course, shadows are a product of light, and light and photography and artwork are all quite intermingled. And we live on a strip or a part of Lincoln Avenue that has a lot of vintage aspects to it. There's some old motels with some old neon and so on. This is a old ice cream shop that still has its old kind of neon sign to it, very vintage, sort of, again, 1950s, 1960s vibe to it. The sun was kind of interesting. It was going down. The street lamps were just coming on, but yet there was still some sun in the sky, and I got that photograph and just sort of liked it. Very nearby, a couple blocks away from where I live, I often walk down this street and I see this guy's truck out there. On any given day, it looks quite similar. He's obviously a junk collector, and I just love the whole idea of, you know, the all of the parts of people's lives that are, you know, piled into the back of this truck, and also the technology and the colors and so on. Just sort of an interesting composition, just how it's all piled on there and it stays there. This next shot, called Night on the River, I think has a very Venetian sort of look about it, and it's taken on the Riverwalk downtown in Chicago. And it was an evening, kind of too dark to be taking this picture, but at the same time what happened is we got some, you know, really interesting lighting effects as a result of it that gives it a sort of a painting kind of quality to it. These next two photographs are the same photograph. The first one here I'll show you is the original photograph, which was taken at Leon's Frozen Custard outside of Milwaukee. And I just happened to be there on a day when this guy had his vintage Thunderbird there. And I thought, wow, this is really a great opportunity to take a picture, because you can't really tell what year it is because of the vintage Thunderbird that sort of fits the vintage of the Frozen Custard stand that was probably built in the 1950s and probably had its heyday in the early 1960s. I've played with this photograph a lot and done a lot of different treatments on it, but this was an oversaturated posterization effect that I got playing around one day, and I just thought it was kind of fun because it's sort of, you can't tell what year it is, you can't tell what time of day it is. The oversaturated light gives it a kind of like too much of a neon glow, but just one that sort of, I don't know, I looked at it and I thought, hey, that's kind of fun, that's kind of cool, I'll keep that. And keeping in the vein of light, I happened to be walking behind these two girls one day, and we were walking under Lakeshore Drive through the tunnel, and it just struck me right away that how similar they looked. They were roughly the same height, hairstyle the same, dressed, you know, almost identically. I don't know if they were twins, but they sure looked like twins. But also going through this sort of industrial ceramic or rather concrete tunnel, it gave it this sort of weird sort of like techno vibe. Like you wonder, where are they going? Are they going off into some weird technology thing? Are they walking off into the future? You know, is this sort of it has a sort of like a futuristic vibe to it as well, and also just the monochrome aspect of it, the, you know, basically black and white quality of it. And this one is actually a larger version of the one we saw as part of a triptych, but it's a piece of ceramic that was in a niche in the garden outside of the Palette and Chisel the studio / gallery in the Gold Coast. And again, just kind of fun. The ceramic aspect of the brick, the ceramic piece that's obviously been shaped, and then the colors, and then the falling vines just all make it kind of hard and soft, interesting. This last piece is a photograph also taken at Palette and Chisel on the second floor. It was a window lock, you know, a little lock that you use to lock your window. But this is an old building that's over 100 years old, and it just, you know, shows you that back in the day, they didn't make things that were simply utilitarian. You know, it had a decorative aspect to it. And so there it is in this vintage building, covered with cobwebs, dirt, grime, window that obviously hasn't been washed in years, and just looking maybe a little bit neglected, but also as something of a survivor in the city, in the building, in this kind of interesting artistic environment, reminding us that even utilitarian things can have a decorative aspect to them. So if you're watching this video because you're thinking that maybe you would like to have a gallery of your own, you know, please visit renoweb.net to learn more about how you can have a gallery like this, and we can hang your artwork and do a little video and show your work so you can share it with other people, whether you're a photographer, whether you're a painter or other visual artist. Some of these photographs I have turned into decorative items that you can take a look at, and some of them have turned out quite interesting and include many more photographs than are included here in the gallery. So please visit renoweb.net and or chicagobroadcastingnetwork.com, since a lot of these have a Chicago aspect to them, obviously. Or you can go to renoweb.net and you can learn more about how you can have a gallery like this for your own photographs or your own visual art.